Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvaditam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyaadhilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavadhitam Triguణarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Namaskar everyone. Welcome you all to yet another wonderful Bhava Darshan, manifesting with the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. Today, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism will be gracing all of us in the Bhava Samadhi Darshan of Somaskandhar Murthy. If you're a temple goer and if you follow the various temples and are a part of the various temple festivals, you would have seen or at least glimpsed the Somaskandhar Murthy at least once in any of the which are being celebrated. Somaskandhar is one of the most beautiful and most represented form of Paramashiva, which is worshipped and celebrated across every single temple in India. As we get into the session, you will learn more about who is Somaskandhar, the Leela behind the happening of Somaskandhar Murthy, as well as the signs of Bhava Samaya Darshan. We will also be from the direct powerful cognitions which are represented by Somaskandhar. With those powerful cognitions, we will be going through internalization exercises and to see how we can apply these powerful cognitions in our own life. But before we get into the whole program, I'd like to share with all of you very special and very exciting news, which which was released a couple of days back on Facebook. These posts are posted by on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's official Facebook handle. The first report is by the News Minute media publication agency, which has published the truth about the Interpol notice, which was supposedly, allegedly, been put on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. All the details and all the references for the information is also provided in the Facebook page. But if you actually go and if you see and read the Facebook page, the Facebook post, you will see that Interpol has never issued any sort of arraignment or any sort of notice against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. Rather, Interpol themselves acknowledge and recognize the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as the leader of the sovereign state of the United States of Kailasa. So this is one of the most extraordinary news. This is a very, very positive news and very, very good news for all of us Kailasian citizens and for the rest of the world as well. So please take a few minutes of your time to go ahead and spread this news on social media. This post is on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's official Facebook handle in Facebook. And so as you can see here, media reveals the truth about no Interpol notice against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. Bhagavan Pontiff of Hinduism has been recognized by the United Nations, international bodies, and multiple countries. After baseless rumors spread about Interpol notices being issued against the Supreme Pontiff, media like the News Minute have revealed the truth of no Interpol notice against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, along with clear evidence of letters directly from the Interpol on the same matter. So actually, if you scroll down on this Facebook post, you will see the references as well as the screenshots where the Supreme of News Minute projecting, and if you can see here, it's being projected right now. So these are the official letters from the Interpol themselves issuing, saying that no notice or any sort of case has been put against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. So this is one of the most extraordinary and one of the good and positive newses which has happened over the past couple of days. And please share this news with all of your family members in all of your social circles. The second, which we want to share with all of you, is the United Nations has recognized the persecution on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and has published this on their official website. United Nations publishes another report on the persecution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism on Kailasa's Gurukul and Kailasa's children and women. A report of the special rapporteur on the sale of sexual exploitation of children, including child prostitution, child pornography, and other child sexual abuse materials, on reparation for child victims and survivors of sale and sexual exploitation. The weaponization of sexual violence targeting women and children, especially of minorities' traditions, is part of a more pervasive and systematic campaign targeting certain indigenous spiritual traditions, minority communities, and their leaders. One such indigenous spiritual tradition, currently targeted by for extermination by the deep state elements, is the Hindu Aboriginal Indigenous Agricultural Tribes, which is the AIAT community led by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. Kailasa's Nithyananda Gurukul, the traditional residential education system of AIAT, is one of the core components of AIAT from a tender age. They learn the 64 Vedas, types of knowledge in a unique method of knowledge transmission. Since 2010, deep state elements have forcibly and unlawfully shut down the indigenous Nithyananda Gurukul, depriving the AIAT children of their fundamental human rights and right to traditional education. Several terrorist attacks continue on the AIT schools and the children to destroy the Gurukul indigenous education system, ironically by the state bodies responsible for reparation. So these reports have not only been published to the UN United Nations recognize this as well, and as you can see here, the official website of United Nations for Human Rights, where these reports have been published. The various persecutions on Kailasa, on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, on Kailasa's Gurukul, and Kailasa's women and children. All of this is available freely. You can go and see for it yourself. All the references and links have been linked in the Facebook posts. If you actually go to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's official Facebook handle, these two posts are featured and will be so you can read the post for yourself, and please share and share this message, share this great news which is happening, where the Hindu persecution due to the hard work and sacrifice of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is now being recognized internationally and is being acknowledged and is being properly in the international forums. And so now with this, we're going to enter into the grand narrative of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, having the introduction of the reviver of Kailasa. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was born in the year 1978 on January 3rd in the holy southern town of Tiruvannamalai in South India. At the tender age of 3 in the year 1981, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was initiated into the Bala Sannyas, which is the child saint, by enlightened beings, masters, and his predecessors through a ritualistic ceremony. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was identified as an incarnation by enlightened beings as Yogi Raj Yoganandapuri, Vidwan Panduranganath, and the 130th Guru Mahasannidhanam, which is the pontiff of the Tonde Mandaladinam of Kanchi. When the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was of 16 years of age, he was coronated by Mata Vibhudanandapuri, the Vedanta Guru of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, also lovingly called as Ji Kuppamal. You can see there is a conch and a kamandalu, which is the water pot, to the left of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, as well as the wooden staff to his right, all of which are given to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism by Mata Vibhudanandapuri. These are the traditional items which are handed over along with the official induction as the successor into the lineage. You can see here the photograph of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism standing with Mata Vibhudanandapuri, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's Vedanta Guru, as well as the coronation photo taken when the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was inducted as the successor of Arunachala Sarvanyapeetham and coronated to revive Sri Kailasa. Next, we're looking at the early days in the mission of Kailasa into the mission of the Nithyananda Sangha. Here leftmost, you can see the black and white photo where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself, brick by brick, constructed the temple monastery complex for his guru, Mata Vibhudanandapuri, under the guidance of his gurus. Later, during the years when the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism started the public mission, the public life, in the year 2001, on the 14th of April, when the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was just 23 years of age, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, established the first Kailasa temple monastery in Tiruchengodu, South India. As you can see here on this photograph, in the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's own handwriting, the annotation is there on the photograph, marking and recording this historic date. Here we can see in the year 2002, 1 year later, on the 4th of November, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism established the headquarters, Adi Kailasa Sarvanyapeetham, in South India. By the year 2004, when the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was 6 years of age, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was conducting mass living enlightenment conventions all across the globe in various countries, taking people cleansing processes of the seven energy bodies. By the year 2005, at the age of 27, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was welcomed with the proclamation message by the Mayor of St. Louis, Francis G. Slay. Here we can see glimpses of the international worldwide conventions of living enlightenment conducted by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. In the years 2015 and 2016, during the auspicious Kumbh Mela festival, one of the largest celebrated festivals in the world, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism initiated thousands into the mass living enlightenment, both in Nasik Kumbh Mela in the year 2015 and the Ujjain Kumbh Mela in the year 2016. As you can see here, we have photos of thousands and thousands of people visiting the Kailasa camp in Ujjain and in Nasik, and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism giving the mass initiations living into living enlightenment to all those who had come. We are now going to be looking at the various coronations of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. The first one being when the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was just 10 years of age. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the 233rd Guru Mahasannidhanam of Kanchi Kailasa Sarvanyapeetham, which is the Tondai Mandala Adhinam. In the year 2004, on December 31st, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the incumbent emperor of the Suryavamshi Surangi Samrajya. In the following years, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the present 23rd Guru Mahasannidhanam of Dharmamukti Swargapuram. In the year 2012, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the 293rd Jagat Guru Mahasannidhanam of Kailasonatha Shyamlapita Sarvanyapeetham. In the year 2013, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the present Mahamandaleshwar of Mahanirvani Akhada, which is the largest apex monastic order. In the year 2014, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the 1008th Acharya Mahamandaleshwar, which is the head of all spiritual leaders of the Atal Akhada, which is the ancient apex body of Hinduism. In the year 2015, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, elected by a congregation of over 1,000 Hindu leaders, pontiffs. The United States of Kailasa is a macrocosmic, ancient, Hindu enlightened civilizational nation whose vision is living enlightenment for all of humanity. Kailasa's mission is to revive and share with today's world the practical applications of the greater sciences of authentic Hinduism, including Hindu cosmic physics, Hindu alchemy, Hindu cosmology, Hindu biology, Hindu mathematics, the power manifestation science, and other sciences as revealed by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. These sciences were once practiced freely in over 56 nations across the continent, but are now facing extinction due to the persecution which has spanned over a millennium. Here we can see the various Sri Kailasa initiatives, Sri Kailasa United Nations initiatives. Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations initiatives support a variety of humanitarian services, which collectively allows for the creation of an enlightened, peaceful, sustainable, equitable, resilient, and thriving world. Out of these 108 initiatives started by Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations, The one which we are going to be looking out of the many is the No Hungry Home project offered by Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for nutritious food and a hunger-free world. More than 1 billion meals have been served over the past 27 years. The Hindu ASMT community has organized more than 3 million annadans serving a total of 1 billion meals. Annadans are the free organic meals as per the tradition, which are served during religious gatherings to everyone without discrimination. Up to 10,000 meals are served on a daily basis, free of cost, and this number rises to up to 100,000 on festival days. As you can see here in the photos, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself is actively involved in serving and in the process of the Annadan service. You can see here in many places the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism with his own hand is doing the Annadan service. Here we can see Kailasa's protective and preventive COVID care centers offered by Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for affordable and holistic health care. During the pandemic, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism converted his monastery campuses into a multi-layer quarantine facility free for all people, regardless of any differences in age, gender, caste, creed, ethnicity, color, socioeconomic status, or any other sort of discrimination. Not only that, but food, shelter, internet, as well as other basic facilities, including free medical care, were provided to all the residents for an indefinite amount of time. More than 30 million citizens followed Kailasa's 28-day spiritual regimen in the year 2020. Here we can see the offerings made by Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for education reform and development in the form of the Nithyananda Hindu University and the Nithyananda Gurukul. The Nithyananda Hindu University was established by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and is the world's largest Hindu university. The Nithyananda Gurukul was inaugurated by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism on the 2nd of October 2006, the revival of the ancient Adi Shaivid Guru Disciple education system, which is an authentic knowledge transmission system based on enlightenment. Nithyananda Hindu University has more than 20 million enrollments, 7,000 free courses, and has extended campuses in more than 150 countries. Here we can see Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for the protection of Hindu scriptures, the Nithyananda Jnanalaya, which is the library, and the Hinduismpedia. The Supreme of Hinduism established the Nithyananda Hindu Jnanalaya to collect and to preserve the 1 million Hindu scriptures while ensuring that knowledge is made accessible and shared free of cost to all people, collecting and preserving 1 million source books on Hinduism. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself has authored more than 10,000 books in 3 different languages, which have been translated into 50 other different languages. Not only that, but the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has published more than 10,000 articles and has given more than 10,000 hours of free discourses with a combined view of more than 1 billion. The Hinduismpedia is a project offered by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, while the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has collected more than 15 terabyte of digital material and rare manuscripts from all the 19 serving pitas, ancient muds, and ashrams. This collection is inclusive of over 1 million pages on Hinduism, 22,000 digital books, 1,000 e-textbooks, and more than 100,000 articles on various topics in Hinduism. Here we can see Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for global peace and religious harmony, offering the confluences for world peace. In the year 2009, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism organized a month-long peace walk covering 1,000 kilometers and 1,000 villages to bring together in harmony from all walks of life to promote feeling connection and oneness among people. During the walk, health camps were conducted in villages along its path. As you can see here, thousands and thousands have gathered, waving the Kailasa flag and doing the peace walk. Next, we have Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations for feminine empowerment and gender equality, offered by the women empowerment programs, the various women empowerment programs. The first one which you're looking at right now is Kailasa's Yogini Sarvingyapeetham, which is the establishment of yoga and meditation universities to empower the quality of life an emphasis on life solutions through Vedas and Agamas, empowering the indigenous rural women, fighting against wrongful gender stereotyping, gender based violence, and lack of inclusive and quality learning environments. Some of these initiatives include Kailasa's Nithyananda Lakshmi, which is a microfinancing service, Kailasa's Women Foundation and Women Empowerment Self-Help Centers, which have been launched in 108 places around the world since its establishment in the year 2009. Kailasa's Ankita program, which is providing foundational literacy about working of basic community service and infrastructural environments. Kailasa's Ashraya program, providing vocational training programs to rural and indigenous women to provide equal opportunities and access to independent, self-sufficient financial environments to them. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revived the Vedic feminism in Kailasa, where more than 80% of leadership positions are occupied by women. Here we can see the various offerings of Sri Kailasa Uniting Nations in the field of yoga as the Nithyananda Yoga. The Nithyananda Kriyas are 108 scientifically validated Kriyas revived by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, specifically targeting the 108 major diseases and disorders such as diabetes, arthritis, blood pressure, rheumatism, and more. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has also revived the ancient forms of yoga, such as the pole yoga, which is the Shivastambha yoga, and the rope yoga, the Kundalini Raja yoga, in which yogic asanas, postures, and weight balancing techniques are performed to create the yogic physiology, aligning it to cosmic geometry that manifests superconscious powers. Not only that, but the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been awarded 2 Guinness World Records for the largest rope yoga and largest pole yoga classes, bringing worldwide attention to these extraordinary forms of yoga. These world records were established on the 30th of September and 3rd of October, respectively. Despite being heavily persecuted continuously for more than a decade, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, in his unwavering intention, commitment, and action in building the only Hindu nation, has established the sovereign state of the United States of Kailasa to protect, revive, and preserve Hinduism, the most ancient, most peaceful, still living, and long lasting demonstrable system that shows the possibility of peaceful coexistence amongst people. Next, we're going to be looking here at one of the most historic and definite moments of the Kailasa nation, where Kailasa, the first nation of Hindus led by Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, in 2 billion global Hindu diaspora at the 14th session of the United Nations Forum on Minority Issues. A significant milestone in the history of Hindus and the sovereign state of Sri Kailasa happened on the 2nd of December 2021. His Excellency Shri Nitya Moksha Priyananda, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Kailasa, represented the persecution of Hindus at the 14th session of the United Nations Forum on Minority Issues. The theme of the forum was conflict prevention and the protection of human rights of minorities. This was the first time the plight of persecuted Hindu minorities was represented in the United Nations. The ongoing and systematic generational attacks on Hindu indigenous traditions were highlighted in these meetings. Here, we're looking at the various attempts by the state and non-state actors on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's life and on Kailasa. More than 70 assassination attempts and attacks, physical attacks, have happened on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in India and abroad. 40 attacks on community members, destruction of monasteries and temples, over 60 incidences of attacks, molestation, and rape on women monks. Intense lawfare through the 100 false legal cases, all but one are dismissed. Intersectional persecution using entire government mechanism, politically owned media and judiciary controlled by politicians, inciting mob violence through social media. These are just but few of the massive methods, methodologies, and ways the illegal persecution and the harassment and the degeneration attacks have been happened on Kailasa and on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for over a decade. But despite all this, Hinduism, in his unwavering intention, sacrifice, and hard work for the Hindu nation, has built the United States of Kailasa for all of us to peacefully practice and live and be have the establishment of the Hindu nation. In this next segment, we're going to be looking at one of the most important contributions given by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for all of humanity, and that is the power manifestation science. We're going to be looking at the spiritual reference, the scriptural reference for the power manifestation science, how the power manifestation science works, as well as a live demonstration of these various powers.